Okay. I could have, it's so long ago. I'll do my best.
That's all I
There
can
are
ask.
probably several tracks that I'm not, because we're talking what, 50 years.
I anticipated that a little bit, so but it'll be fine and entertaining. I'm positive. I've heard you do other interviews. Overall, I think you do a
Yeah.
great job. So
Actually,
I'm
40 years.
40. Yeah. Oh, yeah,
40.
their 40th anniversary. Did you have anything to do with this? You get any involvement on that, other than
Yeah.
the original?
What, at Shout?
Yeah, the box they
Oh,
just did.
no, I didn't see I've never seen that.
Really?
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's not too bad. I won't get too deep into it, but I'll show you. It was a little overpriced for what you get, but you get like this little devil head candle holder that
Uh-huh.
apparently you put like a red candle in it. It bleeds out the eyes and the mouth. I don't know. You get the cassette, a bandana. There's like a 45 in there, and then of course the record's remastered on vinyl.
Yes.
It has unreleased tracks of like Black Widow. Do you remember anything about that stuff? Or
I remember the name, the title.
okay,
Yeah.
we're not really going to touch on that for today. I really just brought it in as a prop.
Uh-huh.
So
Well, yeah,
let me
it's
get
nice. What does it cost?
it went for 250 something like that initially. I think it's down to about 150. But as far as there's only one record of added tracks, and then it's just a remastered CD, vinyl, and cassette, and then the trinkets that I showed you. But it was a Christmas gift. So
Nice, I
anyway,
guess.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I won't waste any more of your time here. I'll get right into this, man. I think
Okay.
I'm double check. I'm recording it across the board. I got audio recording and video recording.
Okay.
So, all right, we're good.
Maybe.
Welcome to the Hard 180, where we are counting down the 100 greatest metal albums of the 1980s hair metal scene. Joining me today is a man who has produced 8 albums that have appeared on the list. The eighth one was the one we'll be talking about today, number 2. You're also officially an author now. Your book, Turn It Up, My Time in Making Hit Records in the Glory Days of Rock Music,
Yep.
available everywhere, right?
I would hope so. I know
But
it's available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and in occasional bookstores, if any remain.
and it's
Yeah,
going to be a while. Go
it's
ahead.
been
Sorry.
it's been getting excellent feed. I've gotten excellent feedback. A lot of people I know, they say quite a bit more than, "Hey, I like your book." Um, Everyone says it's a quick read. They finished it in 2 days, whatever. Anyway, it's nice because I think a lot of people who know that the work that I've done and the bands that I've worked with probably assumed that I couldn't complete a sentence. But it's good. It was great to finish it and to memorialize that era and tell people how we found acts and recorded them and marketed them.
It is an amazing time in going through
Yeah.
this whole list. Kind of reliving a lot of the records. I was well, the Shot at the Devil, which we'll get into in a bit here, was a really big transitional record for me. I was about 12 or 13 when it came out. I think it might have been the target audience, but um, we're going to talk mostly about that. But I did want to get into a little bit because you show up on this list quite a few times. If I could just run down a handful of records, and as I do, share whatever stories or memories you feel like going. I'll start with came in at number 23 was Twisted Sister's "Stay Hungry."
Yeah. Well, that was a big one. I think that was the second biggest seller I had. Um, it was a very difficult album to do, but we overcame a lot of challenges, sonic challenges, instrument challenges, and everybody was fine and pretty agreeable until we left the studio and we were done. At which point, Dee Snider decided I was the worst person in the world, and I think we've sold 6 million albums probably to date. And in a book that he wrote, um, he said, "I think Tom Werman completely destroyed our album, completely destroyed our
Hmm.
6 times platinum album." And I'm after years of wondering why he talked such trash about me, and never replied when I asked him to, if I could go on his radio show to defend myself. He, one of the things he really brought up and was said he was very angry about was the fact that I suggested they might cover a Saxon tune, and he said, "We toured with Saxon. We don't cover tunes like that. That's absurd to ask us." He was very, very kind of insulted and outraged by this, and he said, why should we cover a song that was written by somebody else, and especially a band that we toured with? So on the next album, which was produced by Dieter Dierks, I think he did the Scorpions. The first single from that album was "Leader of the Pack." I was there. I was a teenager when "Leader of the Pack" came out, and really, talk about hypocrisy. Anyway,
And by the way, in my personal opinion, not a very good cover.
Oh, I see. I don't think I listened to it more than once. But the only thing I can figure out about D is that he worked his band. It was his band and JJ's band, and he worked very hard for about 10 years before we worked together. And Doug Morris, who was the president of Atlantic Records, called me at home and said, "I want you to do this album. You're the only guy I think who can make a hit with this band." He said they're big in Europe and in certain places, but they can't get arrested here. So we had a huge seller, and I had already had a bunch of huge sellers, and I'm sure he just figured that everybody credited me for having them all of a sudden have a big hit record. It made their career, actually.
It definitely did, yeah.
He didn't want to share the credit, period. But he was really. It was tough. It was really tough. The other guys were fine. I really liked JJ. I liked everybody else. We had a lot of trouble getting a rhythm guitar sound. It took us 3 days, but we did finally in the end. I thought their material was pretty basic, pretty simple. And I actually told them that I felt that "We're Not Going to Take It" was, a little bit like a nursery, a kid's song.
A little bit.
Yeah. Na, 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 na. Anyway, I wasn't really eager to do that song, but he says he had to beg me. Producers don't rule like that. We don't have that power. So, we did the song because the band wanted to do the song.
Oh, I see what you're saying. All right, yeah.
That's it. So,
Yeah.
Next.
Kicks, "Blow My Fuse." That came in at number 45, Tom.
Really? Yeah, well, it's very AC/DC, Kicks. I think that was their inspiration musically. They were excellent. They were very good. Donnie Purnell was cautious, but Brian and Steve, it was just a very good band. And Riley was on drums, right? No, that was LA Guns. I had fun with Kicks.
Yeah.
Did 2 albums, and I think I can't remember. Was it "Don't Close Your Eyes"?
That's on this one, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that was
a big hit.
Well, I guess it was a big hit with bands like Kicks and Twisted Sister and Motley Crue. back in those days, you really wanted to get airplay on AM radio, because if you had a big hit single, you could sell millions of records instead of just airplay on FM radio, which was album radio. So you could maybe sell a few 100,000. But if you had a big hit, you could sell millions. And I found that one of the easiest ways to get unacceptable bands on AM radio was to make a power ballad. Mm-hmm. So Home Sweet Home, Don't Close Your Eyes. So there were many, and that's what we did with Kicks. I don't remember what we did on the second album.
Now, did you do the record after this one?
Yeah,
I'm not the biggest Kiss guy. Hot Wire, is that what it's called? Hot Wire, yeah.
Yeah, that was it. That
one didn't make the list, Tom. Sorry.
It's okay. I'll do my best. I've been out of the record business for 25 years.
Yeah.
And I did 52 albums, and some of them I can't remember much about. Because I'll be 80 next year.
Oh, you're looking good.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
It was all the drugs. They preserved my organs. So
yeah, there you go. Well, look, I'll take what you get. It's very understandable with as much time has gone by. I know the people that are involved in the process typically don't hang on as much as the guys that like research this stuff years later. It's like, this was the most important moment in my life.
Right.
Well, 49 was Doc and Tooth and Nail. I know that didn't. I'm kind of winging this as I go, but I've absorbed a lot of information over the years. Wasn't there an issue with George Lynch and you in this one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's funny because
I had my own run-in with the guy. So
there were three tough guys in these three bands. Look, George is a genius. Mm-hmm. He's in, as far as I'm concerned, he's top 5 of all the guitarists in the world that rock guitarists. Wow. I thought his playing was great. I didn't know much about him personally, but there was a very divisive engineer, really divisive, who recorded a control room conversation, and then he edited it and played it for George in an attempt to destroy me, and convince George that the engineer was saving the album from
Neil Kernan?
From my incompetence. It was Jeff Workman.
Okay, all right.
And he had worked with, I think he worked with Roy Baker, and he was an excellent engineer, but sick. Okay. He was like a functional alcoholic, and he had a thing about grabbing the principal guy in each group, telling him that the producer didn't know anything and that he was going to save the record. He did that. I used him on 3 records, but then I had to fire him.
I believe he was your engineer on Shot at the Devil, which we'll get into in a little bit here, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Love Hate came in at number 61 with Blackout in the Red Room.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing, because it just wasn't that. I don't think it sold a lot. It wasn't that big.
It was at the end of this whole era, Tom, and the thing is, the people that love it are very passionate about it. So there was people that actually ranked it pretty low on their list, but some people had this in the top 20. And so it all kind of comes out in the wash. But yeah, I was surprised, because another record you worked on, Poison Open Up and Say Ah, I thought would have been really high up. And I think they got penalized by the voters of the group that I assembled for being kind of a chick band. They came in at 55 versus 6 spots down, Love Hate. There's really not much of an argument that Poison had a bigger impact on the scene.
Well, they were a pop band, really.
Yeah.
Poison, not a hard rock metal band. And I have to admit that I tarted them up a little bit. Every rose has its thorn. I called it the kitchen sink approach to producing.
Okay.
Because I had oohs and ahs, and I had string sections, and I had all kinds of stuff in there. I mean, it built from an acoustic guitar and a vocal, and it ended with an acoustic guitar and a vocal. But in between, there there were some flourishes. So that I'm not surprised that it was in the bottom 50
Oh, really? Nice.
of the top 100. Love hate. Columbia paid them so much for an advance that they really had no money left to support the tour. In the studio, they were just great. They're great. We had a great time, and I think "Why Do You Think They Call It Dope" is one of the best songs I ever worked on.
Cool.
It's just they were a very very white hot group. When they played, they blew they blew people away. I don't know what happened.
I kind of, in hindsight, am a little surprised that they weren't able to kind of transition because they weren't your typical hair metal kind of band, but
No.
they got lumped in with that at the end as opposed to being kind of carried in. I think they could have meshed as a hard rock band with that kind of alternative, rock grunge thing that was going on.
Yes, they were irreverent and they had their own style. They weren't, "Come on, baby, let's rock all night." Um, they were special. I actually, when I first saw them, they were recommended to me by a friend, and I went to see them in rehearsal, and I immediately wanted to sign them to my production company and get them through me. And I brought them to Columbia, and Columbia went right behind me and signed them directly.
No.
And I was not happy about that. I had worked for CBS for 12 years, but that wasn't a good deal. Who knows? But I was enthusiastic enough to want to have them be the only and first band on in my production company, and I never had another.
This may be a little off topic, but were you aware? Did you know about the stunt where Jizzy was hung from the Hollywood Hills, the Hollywood sign, in
I,
California?
I think I remember something like that. What? Tell me about it. What?
Well, they were just like, I think it was on the second record, "Wasted in America," and they were just trying to do something to spike up some interest, and that was something that came up on a DIY kind of thing, and they thought it would be instant, but Jizzy actually hung there for a couple hours before anybody really noticed.
Wow.
So he was like tied to a cross like Jesus, and I think hung on the Y. And
Wow.
then after a few hours, they noticed, and then the police came, and then the camera crews, and then he was filmed and made the news, and
Ah.
and then I believe they got cut from the record label. It had the opposite impact they were hoping for, is something like that. It's been a while since I heard Jizzy tell the story, but
Yeah. They were damn good. Really good.
well, we're going to talk a lot about Motley Crue because I got a bunch of stuff to get into regarding Shout at the Devil, but there was one, because you went on to work with him for the next two records as well. I just kind of got to give you a little nod because going through all this, you kind of go back and listen to stuff. I got to tell you, that guitar solo for Home Sweet Home is, I think it might be the most memorable and most important, like if you want to just use the term power ballad or whatever, that solo is freaking amazing. And the fact that it was on such a big hit, and it's not a short solo, you know what I mean? It is like a,
Two parts, right?
like a free bird kind of thing where it's just like, I mean, it's
Yeah.
not that long, but you know what I mean? Yeah, it is. And Mick Mars, we talk about on this show a lot. I praise him. He is an extremely unappreciated as far as impact on that scene.
Absolutely.
Great player.
Underappreciated, heavily underappreciated. And I've said that before. Mick would come in with his lead breaks completely done. I mean, he had composed them and he played them pretty flawlessly in the studio. We didn't have many punch-ins, many mistakes. The one thing that he and I worked on really successfully and well together were fills, guitar fills, say between the chorus and the verse or whatever. and I would sing to him, and he would play it, and we'd work on it and develop it. And we did all this sitting in the control room, and he was great. He was my favorite, and he very quiet. He called me Pops, and and yeah, I mean, he was just what a producer wants, competent, cooperative, ready to go.
Do you remember that solo, like in the moment recording it, thinking anything special about it?
I don't remember recording it. I remember the solo.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think
Uh,
everybody that does, because that song was a huge. That actually kind of seemed to me be the first domino in kind of the power ballad thing. I know Alone Again came out before that, but
yeah.
that one really kind of made it. Every band has to do it now.
Right. Well, yeah. I think the song that was responsible for the power ballad craze or family was Dream On.
Oh, fair enough.
Because
Yeah.
that kind of set the bar.
Bit of a slow burn though, Tom. That was in the mid '70s, and I'm moving to '85. But
Right. But
yeah.
they were early and
Oh,
they did.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we know that Aerosmith had quite an impact on Nicky as well. So, as a matter of fact, they have a song called "Home Sweet Home," I believe. Uh, but
Really?
all right,
I didn't
I
know.
think so. "Home Sweet Home." I don't know. I'm not the biggest Aerosmith guy either, but I'm pretty sure.
I think that was in Dream On. That that
I'm
line.
definitely thinking of a different song.
Okay. Okay.
I don't know. Look, somebody in the comments when this come out will correct me and tell me how I'm an
Right.
idiot, but I'll take it then. Um,
Okay.
well, I did another thing going through your personal list, getting ready for today. One, and also, because I've been listening to basically 100 hair metal albums for the last few months. Um, I there's a very dated sound to a lot of the records that came out at this time. Really heavy reverb on the snare is an easy one to pick out.
Yeah.
But I gotta tell you, when I'm looking at the 8 records you did, maybe the Dokken one sounds a little dated, but I think one calling card across the board is these are all really timeless sounding recordings. When I go back and listen to them, they don't have that dated feel to them that a lot of the records did. So kudos to you for that.
Great. Thank you. My two favorites were not hair metal. My two favorite albums were Heaven Tonight and Dream Police,
Hmm.
by Cheap Trick.
Yeah.
Um, that was the most fun I ever had in the studio.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's weird though because we already talked about D, and I know Nicky's had some issues with you. It's especially weird because he
Yeah.
he continued to work with you for 2 more records, and I
Yes. Yes.
and I and I go back, and these albums were massive hits. They were very successful. They sound amazing. Unless it's something personal, I don't get it because they always just say it's something. I don't know. It's very non-specific, as what I hear.
I try to be. I tried to be collaborative. I didn't push anybody around. I didn't force anything on anyone. Um, I have no idea what really what the deal is. I mean, you could make a case with those with George and Nikki and Dee. That you could say that there was something I was doing that pissed them off. But these are three or four individuals out of over 200 musicians, that I worked with, and that's not too bad. If the other
Sure.
196 were okay with me, because it's interesting that I would have an issue with one guy and got along really well with everybody else in the band,
Hmm.
and that was always the case. I mean, it wasn't like the whole band turned on me or said, "Oh, he was such a dick." It was
Well,
it was usually one person. I
It's
don't know.
probably notable to point out that we are talking about three people that have a bit of a reputation for not always being the easiest guy to work with. When we're talking about George, Nikki, and D, I've interviewed George twice. Once was a blast, and once was bad enough that I said I'm never going to accept an offer to talk to him again. You know
Really?
what I mean? So it's just like these. Maybe it's just a mood thing for these guys, but like when I hear, for instance, Bob Ezrin and Ace Frehley didn't hit it off, but you hear the explanation, and both sides almost tell the exact same story.
Uh-huh. Well,
Bob was too hard on him, and Ace is like, Bob's like, yes, I was. It was just like, so
huh,
it's clear. This one just seems so like anybody that talks other than those three, it doesn't like you were a
yeah,
go-to guy during this scene. There was a lot of success attached to anything that you got put with. And like you said, not everybody. That's kind of why it's an anomaly. It's easy to see if two people don't like each other, but that's usually pretty clear. And this one just
yeah,
seems so muddy. It's like, oh, that record sounds like crap. But what are you talking about?
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
And both, well, all three of them, George, Nikki, and Dee, simply made stuff up. I mean, they literally made stuff up. Nikki, in one of his several books, probably the Heroin Diaries, or maybe it was the Dirt. Um, he said, "I was so uninvolved that he had to produce
Meaning you.
me.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
was so uninvolved that he produced all of Vince's vocals. Complete fiction. Complete. He didn't touch. He didn't do anything. I worked hard on these records, and I think the results speak for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and D talked about getting down on his knees and begging me to do certain songs, and 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 that was ridiculous. And then Nick, who was the other one? George. Oh, this was great. George said I was so uninvolved, I guess, in that album that I urged the band to play video games, and and not only did I urge them to play video games, but I came into the studio with one of those old fashioned change makers that you put on the ice cream man put on his belt,
Oh.
with pennies, nickels, dimes, and
Yeah.
quarters.
Yeah.
There you go, ka-ching, ka-ching.
Chicken. Yeah.
He said that I came in to the studio with quarters so that I could change the dollar bills to the guys so they could play video games. I
And
mean,
you're saying that's not true, Tom. You're telling me that's not a producer did not come in with a change
it's
maker.
it's hilarious. And George also said, Tom didn't know anything about guitar. He didn't know how to play the guitar. Wrong. I had a really good band. I taught myself how to play the guitar, and I played on some of my sessions.
Yeah.
And and they're just so quick to put you down. I don't know. I don't know. But I will tell you that Ted Nugent, with whom I did 5 records,
Mm-hmm.
and with whom I have no connection in terms of politics, okay, he has been extremely complimentary and grateful to me for the last, it's been 50 years. He always has nice things to say. He always thanks me for safeguarding his music and making sure that he got down on vinyl what he wanted to get down, which he hadn't done until we started working together. So occasionally, you'll get some you'll get some gratitude. The interesting thing, peculiar thing, when I look back on my whole career, is that the people I really liked and got along with best, I mean, people I still talk to, uh, didn't make it. They were the bands that, like the producers, like Mother's Finest, like Boy Meets Girl. These are unique albums that I did that I thought would be huge, but for one reason or another, they weren't. and I like these people, and they like me.
Yeah.
Many of them, many of the unsuccessful ones.
And to be
Relative,
clear, in case anybody listening thinks I was going a different direction, that was kind of my overall point. Is it seems odd that there people would take, because you have your defenders. I've never worked with you, but I'm a fan of your work.
thank you.
You know, and the point wasn't Tom Werman's hard to work with. I'm like, how is it these three guys? It was more that direction. So for
Right.
anybody out there, I wasn't. I have no. I have more reason to believe what you're saying than what I've heard. It just seems odd. It's like these massive albums. No, he sucks. Just whatever. But we can move on, Tom. I don't want to give him too much wind of that. All right, well, coming in, man. Let's get to the what we're doing here today. Coming in at number 2 on the list is Motley Crue with their 1983 record "Shot at the Devil," produced by today's guest Tom Werman. Tom, I have some numbers to get out of the way for the listeners. It had an average rank of 6.77778. That's how far we go, Tom. A high rank of number 1, a low rank of number 28, and I was among the people who put this at number 1.
Wow.
So, came in as a finished piece at number 2. Tom, Motley Crue initially signed with Elektra, and they really re-released the Too Fast for Love record. How is it that you ended up being the producer for this? Was it brought to you, or was it something that you were kind of interested in with their buzz around LA?
I think their first album, I think Too Fast for Love, was on some other label.
It was, and
Yeah,
Elektra re-released it.
And I was briefly head of A&R at Elektra, and I had a brilliant guy who worked with me, Tom Zutaut, who later, signed Guns N' Roses at Geffen. He was an excellent A&R man, total music guy. And he signed Motley Crue, and he signed Dokken to Elektra. And he just kept saying, "Werman, you're the guy. You have to produce this band." So we brought the band in and had a meeting in my office, and it was fine. It was good. They said, "Okay," they didn't know too much about me other than Ted Nugent, Cheap Trick, and Molly Hatchet. I think they were around some of the things that I had done. That was it. I had been sent Too Fast for Love by a friend of mine, a girl who I worked with at Epic Records, and she sent it to me, and I said, "Well, it's a little messy, Mm-hmm. I was all about neat, so I kind of wasn't into it. And then when I got to Elektra, I said, "Oh yeah, I heard this band." So that was it. And they also were, I was very agreeable to do this band because they had created a scene.
Now, the kind of satanic imagery comes along with this record.
Yeah.
Was I guess maybe I'm getting ahead of it a little bit, but was there much talk? Like, were you involved in pre-production at all? And was the direction of that whole? Because it's not just the imagery. There's some music in here that kind of lead that into the whole devil worship stuff.
That was just Nicky's thing. I don't know how sincere he was about all that, but I was involved in every single stage of the record, from helping with selecting the tunes we were going to record, right through the mix and the mastering, everything. A good producer should be involved in everything. There was no, I was basically not a lyric guy. I was really involved with the track, the locomotion, the power, the building of a song, and the shape of it, and specific things like, let's change that kick drum, let's change the pattern of that, or why don't you use a ride cymbal there instead of the hi-hat, things like that. So yeah, I was involved, but there was little talk about about devil worship and things like
Okay.
that. Did we do anything backwards? I think maybe not.
Man, I don't think so.
No.
That's the kind of stupid detail I'd remember, I believe, because I was really paying attention to that nonsense when I was into this music.
Yeah, yeah, I did it with Cheap Trick. Did a couple of them.
I'll get the Peters brothers on the phone. So you were involved in like the arrangements and everything. You were pretty
Oh
heavily
yeah,
okay.
that's what a producer does. Um, you help with the arrangements, the instrumentation, and the sweetening. I mean, after the band is finished, I would bring in a keyboard guy, and we just do everything on the album that I felt needed a keyboard of one kind or another, an electric
Hmm.
piano, a Hammond organ, an acoustic piano, and then I did all the percussion myself, the hand percussion. I didn't
Hmm.
play
Yeah,
congas, and I'd bring in some backing vocalists, for the choruses. Everybody did that,
sure.
you know, and you'd even fix up live albums. Live albums are not all live, you
You
know.
don't say, Tom.
so, that was fun though. That was fun. Making
No.
double live Gonzo.
Oh, okay, absolutely. So how much overdubbing is on that side segue?
Well, quite a bit, I think. You keep the drums,
Hmm.
and you try to keep the bass. It's very tricky to do anything over, or record this solo or something, the lead guitar break, because you are still dealing sometimes with the PA, and
Oh,
that
where it's bleeding into other microphones.
exactly.
Yeah.
So you can't. It's yeah. You can hear maybe ghosts sounds of
Okay.
the original performance. Um, but once I mean, I spent a whole afternoon with Jeff Beck, um, fixing his guitar playing on about 30 um, rough mixes from the live tour
Hmm.
that we wanted to consider. And so, even Jeff Beck makes mistakes, and I would just punch in. We didn't re-record, but if he made a clam, I would say just play along, and I'll get you in and out of record. That's what
I'm
happened.
not familiar with that term when recording. What's a clam?
A clam
Hmm.
mistake.
Okay.
That's my term.
All right. You mind if
Flats.
I borrow it once in a while?
No, please, flats and sharps. There are a lot of clams in that performance.
Well, going back to Motley Crue, they're pretty green at this point. I gotta believe there
Yeah.
has to be advantages and disadvantages to recording a band. Touch on that.
You mean a new band?
A new like a band that doesn't have a lot of experience, there could be advantages like you can kind of lean them in a certain direction that
Right.
makes your day a little easier, but there's some disadvantages too. Kind of, I don't know. Any thoughts you have on that is really all I'm
Yeah,
asking.
primarily, if I took a new band or a relatively new band into the studio, we would set up, we would get sounds, and then they would say, "Okay, let's play, let's do it," and they'd all want to record live. I mean, everybody playing at once.
Yep.
I think the Beatles may have done that. I think I don't know who else, but I always did one thing at a time. I keep they could all play together, but we would only keep the drum track
Right.
if it was good. So I would say to them, listen, you've spent your whole career up to this point struggling to hear yourself and others on stage, and you've never had a good mix. Each of them in the studio would have his own set of earphones and his own volume and mix. I mean, we could give each person his own mix,
Hmm.
and you know, bring up the vocal in my earphones, please. Okay. Um, and I would say, listen, guys, the studio microphones are not like ears. They're much better. If you want to go in and play live, go ahead. We'll do a couple of takes, and then you can come in and listen. And they came in and listened, and they weren't horrified, but they weren't happy.
Yeah.
Because there are mistakes that they would make that they could never hear that the mic definitely heard.
Right.
And then without exception, they would say, "Yeah, I see. Okay, we'll do it your way." And we did it my way, and it was neat. Sometimes too neat. Again, critics. A lot of critics thought my stuff was too pop, and they were right. I mean, I'm a pop guy, not a metalhead.
Okay.
I never had any Black Sabbath albums or
But I
Anthrax.
think that's probably why your record's sound is I don't know, like I use the term timeless. Like it has a more traditional production, I guess, compared to there was a lot of trendy things going on with this
Yeah,
scene. And like if you listen to the debut record from Poison versus the one you did, it's a much warmer sounding, natural sounding record. I mean, you're still dealing with some pretty limited musicians, in my personal opinion, but you made it sound good.
yeah, and everyone. I
That
get
was
a
my
lot of
cheap shot.
questions about Poison and did you bring in, ringers? Did you bring in somebody to play the drums? Poison played
Sure.
every note except a couple of harmonica solos, and that was Willie Nelson's guitar harmonica player.
Well, it's not terribly hard to believe they can play that stuff.
Well, yeah.
I didn't. Hey, like those, we have some regular listeners that might be upset if I didn't throw my personal. I have a history of taking some cheap shots at them, but they seem like nice guys. My
They're
point was more
great.
that
They
you
were
had a really
great
good sound on
guys.
that record.
They're great
Uh,
guys, and they worked very hard. They worked very hard.
no, very cool.
They didn't take any shortcuts. They were a party band, a couple of them, big time.
Yeah,
But we made it happen in the studio. I think it was good. It was slick, but apparently it was right for the market.
definitely. Yeah. Well, Mick Mars, we talked a little bit about him not too long ago. He had a very his guitar tone was always good, but it was always evolving. You know what I mean?
Yes,
Very
yes,
different sounds on the three records, and even the Doctor Feelgood or going back to the debut record. All five of those records, very different stuff.
yep.
Do you recall anything specific with how Mick approached his sound or how it was that he developed it each time?
I didn't love his sound on Shout. I thought the record was a little too bottom heavy. Um, but apparently, the fans really put that, at the top of the list for Motley Crue records. Um, the difference between mixed guitar on Shout and mixed guitar on um, Girls, Girls, Girls is huge.
Yeah, drastic.
And a lot of it, I think, was due to the guitar tech. I think his name was Rudy, and by the time we got to Girls, 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 Mick knew what he was doing, and the guitar tech knew what Mick was doing too, and that's my favorite. That's my favored guitar sound. I mean, it was. I guess you could call it more conventional, but it was good, big, full, not as gnarly. People like gnarly.
Hmm.
I was not. I was. You could have a little gnarl in there, but I didn't want it to. I didn't want it to be grunge. So you know that was it. And they love and you love Shout, but I think that not as an album, but on Girls, the cut Girls, Girls, Girls and Wild Side are the two best, for me, the two best Motley Crue songs out of the three
Hmm.
albums.
Well, those are definitely staples in their shows even today.
Yeah, and they sound really good on, on the recorded sound. I like it a lot.
Yeah, I guess if I was just isolating guitar tone, it would be either Girls or uh, Theater of Pain. But I think the guitar tone on Shout at the Devil, when you package the whole product together, it just from the album cover to the imagery of the band to the videos that followed, I just think it's perfect.
Good.
It's an album that I go back to frequently and I play from beginning to end. But
Great.
I'm also just trying to give Mick a little bit of love. How about this, Tom? Who in the
Yeah.
band was the easiest to record?
Which band or who was? Who,
We'll stick to this record in Motley Crue.
okay.
Who in Motley Crue on "Shout at the Devil" was the easiest to record and you
Well, I
remember?
think Mick or Tommy.
Yeah, not
Yeah,
not surprised, but
yeah. Tommy was really good and really enthusiastic and cooperative. Just a pleasure to work with, really. Nicky was not that great a bass player when we did Shout. He became much better, certainly by Girls, Girls, Girls and live. Um, Vince was hard. That
would he be the hardest then? That was my next question.
Yeah, he was probably the most challenging vocalist I ever worked with. Not because he wasn't good. I had to get a special mic. I had to buy a mic, a really expensive mic, to record his voice because to me it sounded as though he was singing through his nose. Um, he would not he would not take his job as seriously as I wanted him to. He would, when he got behind the mic, he tried hard. You know, he wasn't a slacker, but he never went to bed on time. You know, he was a major
That could be
party animal.
problematic for a vocalist. Yeah.
Yes, he Vince was not the kind of guy who would say, uh, "Listen, girls, it's 12:30 a.m. now, and I'm singing tomorrow, so I think I'm going to go to sleep." No, you know, he Vince partied. He had a great time. He was an honest guy, and he was honest about his uh, abilities too. He once said to me, if it weren't for this band, I'd be the guy bringing you your beach chairs.
Yeah.
You know, and he worked hard.
Do you know
But
if he ever sought any actual like vocal coaching?
I do not. I think he may have, but I didn't know the vocal coach. I think he did. And somebody may have come to the studio. I vaguely remember that. Um, but there were days, you know, at the other end of the line or the spectrum regarding singers is Robin Zander, who was clearly a genius behind the mic. He in one afternoon he would do two songs, and he would do the lead vocals, and then he would double certain parts of the lead vocals, and then he would do harmonies for the lead vocals
Hmm.
or and the choruses, and really good. I mean, he's really good. And in that same amount of time, one day we kept one line from Vince's, efforts. One line.
Oh
And
boy, I
yeah,
didn't know it was
yeah,
that bad.
it was tough. It was tough, and I tried to. I had a system
Hmm.
for sparing the vocalist from having to do 10 takes in a row, because then it gets uninspired and boring and
Hmm.
irritating. um, I let them work really quickly by doing different tracks and taking the best from each one. um, I just felt bad for Vince because
Well,
he'd stay in there hammering away, and I don't know
were the
the
other band members around when you would record him typically? Okay, that
no,
probably helped things a little bit.
yeah, yeah,
uh, well, you mentioned Tom Zutat. Did he spend much time in the studio during this record?
yeah. He would come down. He didn't interfere, but Motley was, it was his baby, and he paid attention. He didn't interfere. He didn't suggest a lot, from what I can remember. Um, I don't think anyone from any label interfered very much.
That's
There
good.
were a couple of A&R guys from certain labels who considered themselves capable of suggesting things to me. For them, we had a dummy fader. We had one fader that was, that wasn't labeled, and he'd say, I think that the second half of the guitar solo could, could be a little louder. I said, oh yeah, okay, well let's try it. And I'd reach over to the dummy fader and push it up a little, and then we'd play the song again. He'd say, yeah, it's better.
You probably ran into a lot of those people in your
Not
field,
a
huh?
lot, not a lot, but some. It was rude but effective.
Yeah, okay. Well, I think it was in the dirt that Tom mentioned he saw, and this is in reference to Nicky's fascination with Satanism around this time.
Yeah,
He mentioned he saw a fork float to the ceiling and stick into the tile. I think I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask anyway. Did you see anything supernatural while recording "Shut Up the Devil"?
definitely not. Not a
uh,
chance.
yeah.
Actually, I mean, I've never ever seen anything supernatural.
Yeah. Nicky was also in a pretty serious car accident during the recording. Of did well, you kind of touched on his playing ability at this time. Did it hamper that at all? And are you aware of that? Recently, there's been actually some speculation that he didn't play on the first four
Oh
records at
yeah,
all.
I mean that's hilarious, and I don't know. I think it started with Bob Rock saying that Nicky said, "I don't even remember playing."
Yeah, it did.
No, but I think he said that as a joke because he was high. Um, he played every note
Okay.
on all the albums that I did, and if anybody else had played bass, as he kind of well, he said, as far as I know, somebody came in and replaced my bass playing at night. And if I had heard any other bass player, I would have known immediately.
Hmm.
That's just silly, and it's as silly as the other business about some guy, um, an imposter who claimed to be Nikki Sixx. You know, it's nuts.
I haven't heard that one yet.
Oh yeah, sure. Oh, that was big back in those days. Um, I can't remember the guy's name, but yeah, that was a big rumor about something happened to Nikki, and you remember it was like a Paul is dead thing.
Okay. Wow.
You know?
Well, going back to the accident, did it hamper anything as far as what he was doing in the studio?
It made it much longer.
Yeah.
Every bass part he would record would take pretty much the whole of an afternoon. And some other people like Peterson in Cheap Trick would do two takes and that's it.
Yeah. Okay.
And Nicky broke his shoulder or separated it,
Right.
and it was his I think it was his playing arm, his pick arm, and he played with his arm in a sling, and that's not
That seems
that wasn't
problematic.
that wasn't easy, but he did
You
it.
met you mentioned you touched on Vince's like penchant to like stay up late and party. Did the party, specifically to this record, did it ever spill into the studio at all?
No,
Okay, so it was strictly business when you guys were recording.
pretty much, pretty much. I mean, there were party favors, but nothing serious. Nothing serious. I never saw Nikki or Tommy compromised in any way in the studio.
Okay.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, while recording this record, they also make a performance at the US Festival, which is basically just blown into infamy, in the years since. Any chance you were at that?
No, no, I don't remember that. Where was it?
Oh God! In California, it was like hosted by the guy. It's really known for Van Halen getting like $1 million to play, and there was 3 days, and
Huh.
it might have been in San Francisco or Sacramento.
I
But
see.
the video of this is up on YouTube, and this performance it's Motley Crue, playing a lot of the songs from this record before it came out, dressed in the same clothes we see on the album cover.
Ah,
And it's pro shot, but yeah, it was on what they called Metal Day. I think Judas Priest, Ozzy, Van Halen, were all playing that same day. So
yeah. I saw Van Halen once. I don't think it was there, but it could have been. It's hard to remember. I do remember sitting down with David with David Lee Roth after the show, way back in some room,
okay.
and having a good time.
As is tradition.
Yeah.
You mentioned you're involved in the mixing of every record you did.
Oh yeah.
So now, did you actually mix this album, or do you work with somebody else when you do that?
Well, you're engineer. The
Yeah.
engineer mixes the record. I just tell him what to do.
Okay.
I was
And that's Jeff Workman again. We're talking about.
yeah. I
Okay.
was not technical at all. I mean, I would sometimes EQ an instrument a little bit, or the main thing I did was decide on the levels of everything. Um, and then I might add some percussion while we were mixing. Um, but really everything was finished and everything was properly recorded. And if you record it properly at the with the right frequencies, instead of trying to jam everything into the middle, mid range, then it should be pretty natural mix.
Hmm.
Occasionally you run into a really difficult one, and then you come in the next day and you don't like it, so you put all the faders down and start again. Um, I knew how I knew what we could do with sound, but I didn't know how it worked. So
Oh,
so I would say, you know, more slap on that, more echo on that. Let's phase that a little too bright on the blah blah, and he'd do it. My engineers would do it. They were great. I had great engineers, and I was lucky because I depended on them completely. To
did
translate my wishes into real sound.
were there more technical, and they kind of come in like that's this many hertz on
Oh yeah.
the mid range? Yeah, okay.
Well, they would know about that. We didn't talk hertz.
Yeah, no, yeah, yeah. They translated you into their knowledge, and yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
that's
that's
right.
where I was going there.
That's it.
Was the band involved in the mixing at all? Do you remember for this record?
For any record, hardly.
Yeah.
No, no.
God.
But I was absolutely certain to make sure that somebody from the band approved all the mixes
Hmm.
before I turned the record in, so they couldn't bitch and moan.
I assume that was Nikki.
Everybody, whether it was Nikki or not, I think it probably was. You give them a cassette at the time, and they listen to the mixes and they say, yeah, okay,
Okay.
let's go. Yeah.
When was the last time you listened to this record?
To shout, I
Yeah.
don't listen to the whole record. if I'm on my computer and something triggers a memory, um, I may listen to a song, but I haven't listened to any of my records from start to finish in 30 years. I don't know. Like,
Okay.
I just don't. I listen to. I surprise myself. I'll listen to a Boy Meets Girl. You ever hear a Boy Meets Girl?
Yes.
Yeah,
I don't quiz me on them, but
right. Completely unusual for me. But I loved it. They loved it. I loved them. They loved me. And I'll listen to some of that because it's so different. And they wrote. They had hits. They recorded songs, I think, on our album that Whitney recorded later, because there were songwriters basically. Waiting for a star to fall. I want to dance with somebody.
okay.
They wrote that, and I don't know. I'll listen to that. I'll listen to. Well, I go to the gym. I have a 4-hour playlist. I don't exercise for 4 hours,
Right.
but I can go to anything on there. And the only things I have on there that I produced are Auf Wiedersehen from In Color, Cheap Trick, and and maybe one other. So I don't listen to my work. I do. I used to. You know,
Yeah.
um, a lot, but no, not now. In fact, I only listen to mostly my 4-hour playlist. It's pretty much every song I really cared about
Okay.
back in those days.
Well, when Shout at the Devil did come out, it pretty quickly we had some success. It sold like about 200,000 copies, I'm told, in about 2 weeks. It would
Yeah.
eventually go on to be quadruple platinum. Do you remember anything about its initial, how it was received once it came out? Any reaction? Any thoughts on that at all?
All I know is that it took off. Probably a week or two after it came out, I was at a golf tournament up at Pebble Beach, and it was a big music golf tournament. And I
You
was
have
in
been
the,
golfing a long time then.
yeah, pardon?
You mentioned golf in one of our email exchanges. You've been golfing a long time.
Yeah, since I was 9.
Okay. All
But
right.
I was in my room after the round, and I got a call from Zutot, and the first thing he said was, "Werman, we have a hit."
Nice.
And that's when it was apparent that the record was taking off. Um, those are great times. They're also stressful because you're aware that you have to do it again,
hmm
or you'll be found out as an imposter. You
Yeah.
know, so you have a big hit, and you're expected to have another big hit. You say, "Oh, geez, you know, it's going to be tough." So a lot of that, admittedly, leads to self-medication.
Mm.
You know, and it's stressful.
How much, well, you use your term, self medication, were you dealing with during the 80s?
It was almost all cocaine, and it was everywhere. I
hmm
mean, everywhere, all the time. Especially in the rock and roll world. Um, it was just something you did. It was part of everybody's musical activity. Uh,
Well, anybody watching this and sees that you're 80 years old is probably going to want to start snorting cocaine, I think, because it seems like a preservative, too.
yeah.
The hair looks good, Tom. You got nice skin. I don't know what to tell you.
it's been really sunny here and hot. So,
Okay.
I go out to the pool and I lie down on one of those floats, and that's why you get a tan.
All right.
And golf.
It sounds like a decent way to spend your time.
Yeah, well, I'm telling you, retirement. I've waited way too long to retire, but
Hmm.
I know some friends of mine who say they're bored. I am so happy being retired and having all this time. And since I finished the book finally, that was like I'd wake up every morning and the book was right here,
Yeah.
Oh, I got to finish the book. But that was a great relief. And now I have an appointment book still, and I use a book, and I'll write down things that I need to do or appointments that I make, and I check it every night because I'll forget what I'm supposed to
Yeah.
do the next morning. And frequently I'll come across a blank page, and I'll say, "Oh, this is so great. I'm getting up in the morning, I have my coffee, I can do whatever I want,"
Yeah.
you know? And I
I'm.
worked really, the last job I had, the last career I had was as a luxury innkeeper, a B&B.
Hmm.
And I was always in service. So I had to make breakfast for 15 people, and yeah, that was a full-time job. So I went from really hard work, much harder than producing records,
Hmm.
to free,
I
totally free.
also hear that the innkeeper Coke isn't as good.
It's good.
The joke.
Listen, it was good to get out of LA, which I did, 24 years ago. Um, I haven't come across anything but weed
Yeah.
since then.
Well, it's getting to be illegal everywhere finally. So.
Yeah, it's strange. I mean, you know, I was at Columbia University in the '60s, and we would risk 10 years in jail to get high.
Yeah, it's a
You
different
know,
time, man.
and now it's legal, and there are cannabis shops all over the place, and I really don't care that much.
Yeah.
I don't want, and I've tried it, and it's way too strong.
Hmm.
It, it's just we used to have to smoke a whole joint, and the seeds would explode in our face, and and
uh,
and everything was great. Now it just kind of knocks you over the head.
yeah. Never really been my thing, but I'm all for the legalization. But
Yeah, yeah.
uh, let me give you I'll name a member of the band, and you kind of give me your thoughts on them as a person and as a musician, to whatever you want to share. Basically,
Sure.
we'll start with Tommy Lee.
Great guy, great guy, enthusiastic, kind of like a puppy dog. I mean, and fascinated by all the new stuff. He was really into sampling back then, although we did very little. Um, he's just an enthusiastic, cooperative, great drummer. I loved him. We had a lot of fun.
What about Mick Mars?
He was great, wonderful, cooperative, prepared, businesslike, straight. You know,
Doesn't seem like much of a talker.
nope, nope. Um, I understood from somebody somewhere along the line that on the road he liked to draw the shades, stay in bed as long as he could, and watch TV.
Hmm, all right.
Yeah, and I don't think he was very decadent after the shows. The other
I
guys
mean,
were. They were
it seems like that's the way it's been reported, that there really isn't a lot of stories about him.
right.
Um, what about Vince Neil?
Well, Vince was a happy-go-lucky guy. I mean, really, he laughed a lot. He never got angry. Um, he was just having a good time. He
Hmm.
he knew he was a lucky guy. Um, he was a very popular guy. He liked people, and you know, kind of harmless in a way. You know, and not deceptive. He was an honest guy, you know.
And that would leave Nikki.
Yeah, it would leave Nicky guarded. He was very guarded, and you never really knew what he was thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know. I spent a little time with him at his house. Um, he never revealed anything about himself, um, but he was the brains behind the outfit, the whole way they presented themselves, and the songs, the lyrics. He was good.
Okay.
He was good.
Well, if you have time, I'd like to get kind of just quick run through track by track and give me any thoughts you got.
Okay, there may not be very many, but
You warned me. Well, it opens with "In the Beginning." You
yeah,
got kind of that soundscape thing going on. That's kind of neat. And then for the longest time, I thought it was Nikki who did the voiceover, but it was actually your engineer, Jeff Workman, correct?
yeah. I thought it was excellent what he did, and he did it pretty much by himself. I think Nicky wrote the lyric. Um, I'm not even sure if it was he or Joe or Jeff, but that was that. That was good.
And then, of course, kicks into the title track, "Shout at the Devil." Um, there's a line in there that my head's spinning round and round, but this in the seasons of wither will stand and deliver. Mentioning two Aerosmith song titles, "Round and Round" and "Seasons of Wither." Do you know anything about whether that's actually like is that just a coincidence that's turned into internet lore, or is that something that Nick maybe actually discussed?
I didn't realize that. You're telling me for the first time. I didn't know. Round and round, yes. Seasons of Wither, no.
It's a deeper track, but
Yeah, I didn't know that.
well, yeah, obviously I'm guessing you remember this song, "Shout at the Devil."
Oh yes,
Okay.
of course, of course. Um, but there, all I remember about that song is singing, is being part of the chorus of
Well, like
shout,
Vince's
shout.
vocal. Oh, you sang on it.
Yeah,
Nice. Were there a
I
lot of
also
other
sang
people?
"We're Not Gonna Take It."
Okay.
Yeah, or "I
D
Want a Lot."
D would prefer you not mention that, but going back to earlier in our conversation,
Yeah,
the vocal take for Vince on "Shout at the Devil" is kind of because it's so rapid fire, and it's like as a listener, you couldn't even understand half the words he was saying.
you
How how
you
many takes
rarely
is that?
with Vince, you rarely can
Yeah.
understand most of his lyrics unless it's a slow song. Um, yeah, he's not an articulator, um, but I don't know that it wasn't very difficult to record any song um, with that band.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, it's weird because "Shout at the Devil" is actually played on the radio much more now, but it was never released as a single. And the next song is a debut single, and you really don't hear as much, and that's "Looks at Kill."
yeah, looks a kill. Well, that one I remember. I think yeah, this is hard, but I think I had something to do with the obvious James Bond theme.
Hmm.
You know, it's da 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 da
Oh,
da da. That's the James Bond theme song.
never put that together, Tom. That is brilliant.
Yeah. So nobody ever, busted me for it, but I don't know, maybe the familiarity helped the song. And that was I remember the strange video
Yeah.
with the girls in the cage.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. Can you imagine doing that today?
Mm, no.
Girls in cages. Okay, thank you.
The next song is "Bastard." Now, this landed on the PMRC's famous "Filthy 15."
Oh, yeah?
This
Really?
is a song that probably would have got me in trouble if my stepmother would have read some of the lyrics. Probably almost any of these songs, honestly, but this one in particular. Um,
I just remember consider that bastard dead.
yeah,
Chop off
it's
his
like
head, right?
yeah, in goes the knife. Something about the body turns blue. I don't have the lyrics in front of me, but yeah, it's pretty graphic.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Well, yeah. Nicky was he was very creative in that way. That was about their first manager, I think.
okay. Oh, okay. God bless the children of the beast. The instrumental credited to Mick Mars. Does it? Is there a lot of like additional instrumentation? Is this what you talk about? Bringing someone in after the fact and adding stuff on top of Mick's guitar?
You know, I wish you had told me that we were going to. I could have reacquainted myself with this,
Oh,
but I don't remember. I don't remember.
it's got kind of a harpsichordy thing. Do 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 do
Well, if it
do
was a
do do.
keyboard, then it was one of my guys.
Okay.
Yeah,
Uh,
it was a pro. The only time I think that keyboard appeared on a Motley Crue record and was played by someone in the band was "Home Sweet Home."
okay. And that is Tommy playing that, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
The next track, Helter Skelter, Beatles cover. Any was there? Were you involved in any discussion and why this was picked?
No, I don't remember. I would sometimes suggest covers to bands. I think they did this because it was Motley-ish, you know,
Okay. It,
the subject matter.
yeah, and it kind of ties into the demonic. I mean, plus the association with Charles Manson. I know
Yeah,
that those kind of things are what we talked about as kids. The second side kicks off with I'm sorry, Red Hot. I absolutely love the double bass intro that Tommy has on this.
yeah.
Any memories of Red Hot?
No, I know it was very fast. that was
Yeah,
about, that was about it. These are songs that I haven't actually
sure.
heard in decades. So,
Now, well, what about? We've talked a little bit about Tommy. Was he a pretty quick record when you got the drum sound down?
yep, yeah, he didn't make many errors, um, and he was forceful. And he was, if I suggested he play something different, a little different, he was cool. You know, we'd try it. If it worked, we'd do it. If it didn't, we wouldn't. It was that simple. And I don't know. He was, he was just a pleasure. You
Okay.
know.
Well, I don't want to put you on the spot
Yeah.
if you're not into this. I'll just hammer through the last four titles for the listener, and if you have any thoughts on any of these songs, please just go ahead and share them. We got "Too Young to Fall in Love," "Knock 'Em Dead Kid," "10 Seconds to Love," and "Danger."
Yeah. Danger. I don't remember it very well. Um, you know, I have to apologize that I can only remember really the whole experience
Mm-hmm.
of being in the studio with them for the first time. I really enjoyed the Outlaw Association because I was always a very I was like a trained uh, sheep. Uh,
Yeah.
I did
Right.
what I was supposed to do, and I was a private school prep guy and Ivy League and all that, and I was supposed to have a different life. Um, so this was really the first time I had encountered guys purposely uh, who purposely disregarded convention. You know, they just didn't care about the rules. They didn't do it. I don't think they did it just to as a business thing, as a marketing thing. We're the bad boys of rock and roll. They were bad. you know, there was chaos in their lives. I I spent some time in their dressing rooms, before shows, after shows. I went out to see them a bunch. Um, and they weren't saints. They weren't bad people, but there was nothing they wouldn't try.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, I had a recent a thought that I've shared on a previous podcast, and what you're saying when you look back at this record, because it's easy for someone like me who probably listens to this album at least once a year and probably listened to it 90,000 times in 1983. You know what I mean? So much of this stuff is just ingrained in me. Where this was more of a gig for you, and you've done so many other things since then. But I went to a funeral earlier this year, and I thought about other funerals I had been to, and one thing that stuck out is that, like, I almost never remember the actual service. I remember the before and the after and the event. I remember who I ran into, who I talked to, but
Yeah.
it almost seems like this is a lot like that. It's like, well, you remember the moments, you remember the time, you remember the people you worked with. You just don't remember exactly what mic you used on this song. So
Right. The only, I remember much of my involvement in the actual playing in certain records and singing, um, and the percussion.
okay,
If there was nothing outstanding, good or bad, about the process of recording a song, it's just a song,
mm-hmm.
really, along on the album, and not a terribly important song. We'd pick 15 or 16 songs to record, and after a couple of weeks, it would become apparent which ones we should spend most of our time on, because they were the most promising. And then we ditch 4 or 5, and zero in on the ones that we
Right.
all felt were going to be the big ones.
Did you ever do anything on any record you worked on where, like, we know these 3 songs are going to be the singles? We think there might be a hit here. We're going to really produce the shit out of those, and maybe not so much on the other ones.
Well, I mean, that would be something like Every Rose Has Its Thorn.
Mm-hmm.
When I heard that in rehearsal, Brett played it for me for the first time on my guitar. And I said, okay, we're good. Because I thought this is a hit song. This is a big hit song. And I was right. It was the only number 1 I ever had. Let's see. Cat Scratch Fever. Same thing. Surrender, same thing. And what else? Well, We're Not Going to Take It, and I Want to Rock.
Those were the obvious singles when you were doing that record.
Absolutely, there were, and then there were some that I thought were obvious singles that weren't at all, and there were some that were released as singles that I thought probably shouldn't be, that were big. So, but much of the time, the songs with the most potential would become obvious, and we would, if we had a limited amount of time, we devote most of it or more of it to those.
Okay.
It was a strictly business thing.
Fair enough. Well, I'll kind of wrap up with this, and Tom, as I've been going through the series, we're just about to, I think it's been released up to record number 45 right now, so we got a ways to go. But I'm getting a lot of positive feedback, and as someone who has had such a huge impact on the scene, like I said, you were a producer on 8 records on the whole list, and it's like you, Max Norman. There's another big one. I'm sorry, I don't have the data in front of me, but there's
Jack
a handful
Douglas,
of you.
maybe Jack.
No, he's not on. I think he might be on here only once. He didn't do a lot of hair metal, but
Right.
The point I'm getting at is that there's a lot of people that are really giving a lot of positive feedback. Thanks for doing this. It's so fun to go back and listen to all this stuff. So I think that that's a message that should be sent to someone like yourself who really did have a pretty big footprint on this whole scene. So thanks.
You're welcome. Everything we talked about is expanded on in the book.
Of course.
Yeah.
And turn up the turn it up. My time making hit records in the glory days of rock music. Find it on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, or pretty much anywhere you can buy books. By the time this episode drops out, it'll have been out for about a year or so.
No, November.
What's that?
It came
November.
out in November.
Yeah, but this episode is probably going to hit late summer and fall. So yeah, as the listeners are hearing this, yeah, but it's still available everywhere, and a must read for anybody who loves this scene. If you're listening to this series, you probably already own the book, I think, but if you don't, go out and get it. Well, Tom, it was a pleasure to finally get to do this. I was really looking forward to it, and you didn't disappoint. Any last thoughts? Anything I didn't talk about you want to just get out there?
Oh, there's a ton, but we can save it. If you want to do it again, I'd be happy to. I really enjoyed this.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time, Tom, and all the best.
Thank you. See you later.
Take care.
Bye-bye.